Yes, Leslie, this year will be 17 years that I've been within the Y movement as a whole. So I've been around for a little while, and it is through participations in cohorts. So I participated in several leadership cohorts over time, and I was introduced actually to this very subject 10 years ago, and along with probably about 4 other assessments as it relates to self, learning about yourself. How do you grow? How do you, as far as emotions, how they affect us every single day? And I will tell you another assessment that I took was Strength Finders. And among my top 5 strengths, learner is one of them. And so the learner in me has been intrigued by every assessment, particularly 3 that I've taken over the period of 10 years. And emotional intelligence is one. Why? Because you can grow. This is something that you can continually work on to grow your emotional intelligence to the goal of having high emotional intelligence in the quadrants that you will learn today. So that's just a little bit of how this came about. So today's presentation that you're actually going to see is a combination of research over a period of time and experiences and learned information that I have collected and put together just for you all today. And it has been so very helpful for me over 10 years. I'm constantly working on my emotional intelligence. So I hope it'll be very informative for you and helpful for you. So at this time, do I have control that I can pull up a PowerPoint, or is the PowerPoint ready? So we can just jump on in it.
You're good. You should be able to share.
Okay. Can you all see? You can't see it yet, can you? Okay. Let's see if we can get out of it and get it back up. Okay, I'm having technical difficulties with my laptop today. Can you pull the presentation up? It's not allowing me on my end to share.
David, do you have that presentation to pull up?
Don't you love it? I love when you have technical difficulties.
All right, give me 1 second. I have it pulled up. I am going to share my screen. Move this actually over to a different desktop so you guys can all see it. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, and I apologize as well, because I promise you, I know how to share my screen. But my laptop has been a little quirky lately. Maybe that means it's time for me to get a new one. What do you think?
Yes,
Yes,
I agree.
I think too.
Can you guys see my screen or the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, just
Right. All right, give me 1 second. I'll play it from the start. All right.
Okay, so what is emotional intelligence?
hey, David, we're in the wrong setting. There we go.
So today, as we learn a little bit more, it's going to be more of an introduction today of what is it? Understanding the aspects of emotional intelligence and how we can apply it each and every day to our lives. David, can you? So today's objective is, one, we're going to know the difference between IQ and EQ, because honestly, we get a lot of those questions. What's the difference? We're going to learn how to manage your emotions by recognizing how thoughts and emotions are connected. We're going to improve your self-control by identifying physical cues that indicate you or have been emotionally hijacked. Yes, this is real. Emotional hijack is true. It happens every day. We just don't realize it at some times of what's going on, that there's a name, as a term to go with it. And we're going to discover how emotional intelligence can help you. Next. So before we get started, I will tell you at our leadership team meetings, this is something that we do before we start a meeting. You have to know what's going on in the room to determine, as you move forward through subjects, different reactions. So I'm going to ask everyone to put in the chat an emotion that you are feeling right now. For me, my emotion is excited to be here. So we have a lot of different emotions. I see a lot of relaxed, smile, slight smile as it relates to the emoji that is being shown. Wonderful. So David, can you move to the next slide? The reason why we do emotional check-ins, sometimes there can be subjects or titles or just something within the atmosphere, the air, whether it's your work, whether it's your home, that there poses some form of an emotion, a tension, a feeling that comes out before you even open your mouth. And everybody can feel emotions, whether we realize it or not. And decisions are made on an emotional realm. And so the reason why in a workplace, particularly when we have meetings, we start out with the emotions. That way, as we go through the meeting, we know where everybody's at, where they're feeling, where they're standing, that if they're not reacting in a manner that we think they should be reacting, or they're not being their usual self, by calling out the emotion, we now know what's in the room so that we can maneuver through and accommodate in ways of the meeting to address a meeting to be more productive. So emotional intelligence, what's the difference between what is called emotional intelligence is also known as EQ. So EQ versus IQ. So on the IQ side, it's the analysis, know-how, the technology, the expertise, the concept and design, critical thinking, and patterns and logic. Basically, that's our intellect. On the EQ side is extremely emotional. And so you're looking at empathy, motivation. Thanks, David. I love that. Empathy, motivation, and the ability overall to address our emotions as we move forward. It also talks about relationships, whether it is social relationships, also the self-control and management of ourselves. So ultimately, we're going to learn first that the quadrants are going to be next. If you can move to the next slide, because I just talked. So if you can move to the next slide. We're going to talk about different quadrants, but also the benefits behind the emotional intelligence. So why should we practice every single day? First, we have to learn. So there are tests that you can take to determine where you sit on the emotional intelligence realm, as far as where your scores lie. This is nothing to make you feel bad when you take a test on the scores. It's just literally to say, okay, this is where I'm at, and this is where I have some areas of opportunity to work on to develop myself as it relates to emotional intelligence. So the benefits behind it, you build trust. It provides creative, effective teams. It helps with conflict resolution and crucial conversations within home, workplace, or within our community. Higher job satisfaction and higher quality of life. Higher performing. Becoming mentors, that is very important today. I actually have several mentees across the United States. And this is one area that they've asked assistance with, is dealing with the emotions. So in return from a mentor is if they're having a real bad day and they're about to be emotionally hijacked, they would call me or email me and say, hey, Angela, I need to talk this through before I walk in this room because I'm feeling emotionally hijacked right now and I can't get in this space with the people to have a conversation. So becoming mentors behind this as you continue to learn and develop. And then it liberates you mostly to be your authentic and creative self. I will tell you, the more I have learned about myself over the past 10 years and learning about emotional intelligence, we are very emotional. I will tell you, I am a feeler as it relates to personality traits. I am an emotional person, but because I have understood this and have been going through this for so long and working to improve my own emotions, I can instantly recognize I'm completely self-aware. I can begin working on management, but I also notice what else happens around me. Okay, David. So the aspects of emotional intelligence, we have a self side, which we have to develop within ourselves, and then a social side, which is also continuation of development. So on the self side, we have self-awareness and self-management. So basically, who am I? And what do I do? So if you know who you are, if you're self-aware, the ability to recognize and understand your moods and emotion and your drives, as well as their effects on others. Once you realize who you are, then it allows you to be able to manage yourself or manage your emotions, and which gives you the ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses and moods, to suspend your judgment and to think before you act. How many times have you may have gone back and had to apologize to someone because you made a statement and it weighed on you heavy, but you made a statement out of an emotion of how you were feeling at that time? Social awareness. It's all around us. The ability to understand the emotions or makeup of others or people. When you walk in a room, can you sense anything that's going on? When you look at somebody or having a conversation with them, do you sense them? If you know they're bubbly all the time, but then they come in the room and you say, something's not right here. All right, do you have the ability to sense that? It's a skill in treating people according to their emotion and their reactions at that time. Basically, it's empathy. Social skills is being proficient in managing the relationships and building networks, and the ability to find common ground and build rapport. A lot of times in social skills, we'll see all this happen within big group settings. If you notice if something's going on, are you able to help utilize your emotional intelligence to develop and manage relationships that are taking place within? Okay. So let's start with the very first one, self-awareness. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize what you are feeling. So if we go back to the very first exercise of the check-in, it's simple as this. How do you feel? That's why we do emotional check-ins. You have to first recognize how you're feeling, and then understand the habitual emotional responses behind that, and then recognize how your emotions affect your behavior and performance every single day. Next. So if we have high self-awareness, as I explained earlier, when you take this assessment, it gives you scores. And there's a range in your scoring, and it shares what is the highest range. What are some areas of improvement is what I like to call, I don't say weaknesses. We all have areas of improvement. We have enough negative talk. So it's just opportunities to grow. So a high self-aware person, you can see yourself as others see you. You have a good sense of your abilities. You know your limitations and self-confident. So as I explained, I've been on this journey for about 10 years now on social emotional intelligence. As it relates to self-awareness, I am completely self-aware of who I am, what my triggers are, and what I need to do related to those triggers, as well as knowing my limitations of where and what situations may trigger me that I can learn to begin to mitigate before, if I have to go through those situations, or if it's something I don't have to do, I'm just not going to go through that process because I know my limitations. So I'm completely self-aware of who I am and my abilities. Next. Strategies to develop. So once we identify those emotions and we understand who we are, we have to work on identifying even more so different emotions, different areas, as I mentioned, triggers. So once we go through a process and we realize, oh my goodness, I'm feeling some type of way. What are these emotions? What are these feelings? And begin to call them out so that we recognize what we are feeling in the moment of that time. Ask others how you are affecting them. Seek and accept feedback. If you're not socially aware and you come in and you may just start saying things and a room shuts down quickly, you may not be aware that the words that just came out of your mouth sent emotions through someone else. And in return, shut a room down instantly. And then you wonder why no one's talking anymore. It's because of the effect that you just had on them. But you won't know that unless you take time to say, hey, what happened? I just noticed the room just shut down real quickly. Was it something that I did? Let's talk. Give me some feedback. I need to know real quick. That's how you start building those relationships and understanding who you are, but also moving forward to learning how to manage. So under self-awareness, you have to know how you're showing up every single day to your personal self, how you're showing up in a group of setting of people, how you show up just in every day of your life. And then you have to work on admitting what you need to change. We know change is hard for people, but reality is sometimes everybody needs to change. And if you're going to have a high emotional intelligence, you have to be willing, one, to accept who you are, to understand who you are, accept who you are. But if there's areas that need to change, be willing to change. And then anticipate your button pushers, or I call triggers. We all have triggers. It's identifying what those triggers are, because we may not realize it as it relates to self-awareness, what those triggers are. So as you continue to move forward in this process to learn about yourself, then you identify what your triggers are. Okay. So quick activity. And this because I like to hear from different people. If we were face to face, I would have been all over the room by now in this conversation. So here, when you see this picture, I would like someone that's brave enough to come off mute and say, what is your emotion looking at this picture? Oh, come on. I know we have some brave people. And I will tell you, my personality is, we got a while for this presentation. I don't have a problem with quietness and silence. I have learned that over time. So I'm just waiting for someone to dare to jump out and tell me an emotion they feel when they first saw this picture.
Are you talking about my personal
Anxiety.
budget? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it can be anyone, personal or work, because this is just a part of life. Anytime you see a picture that's related to money, how does it make you feel?
Financial stability.
Okay, wonderful.
A little anxiety.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I was going to say, anxiety,
Right now.
uncertainty.
Feel
Yeah.
constricted inside.
No
Okay.
constricted.
Okay,
Expectancy,
say that again.
expectancy.
Oh, that's a good one. Expectancy. So you're expecting some money. So you speaking that out. Okay. Mr. Rollins is expecting money, everyone.
I feel anticipation, at least professionally, when I see the photo.
Okay, that's wonderful. Anticipation. Okay.
I think of planning and organization.
Okay, as it relates to daily lives or just in general of a budget?
I think both.
Okay.
If planned right and organized properly, it typically works out.
Okay.
I feel deadlines.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you anxiety and what was just said, because I can't see who it is on the screen. Deadlines are a lot of what are reactions behind when they see this. But I love that their anticipation, expectations, planning, organizing. I have not heard those terminologies when associated with this. So this is amazing that there's different emotions that come forth from this. Now, not every emotion, emotions are your emotions. So there's like no right or wrong, but I love the mere fact that we can find something different that comes forth when someone shows a picture of money and then puts the word budget in front of it, especially during a time like now when we're sitting in a pandemic and have been for quite a while. Okay, thank you so much for your participation in that. Now we're going to, as we move forward, learn how to manage ourselves. So self-management, it's the ability to stay focused and think clearly when you have strong emotions that think before you act. Control your impulses and your moods, and the ability to withhold judgment. How hard is that? Because when we go into an emotional tizzy, sometimes, depending on whatever our trigger has been, then the first thing that happens is all of this, the opposite. We don't control it. We start judging, we start throwing things at everybody. We definitely do not think before we act. So if you remember earlier, I made a statement, sometimes you may have to go back and apologize. It's because we were not able to self-manage our emotions. Next. So if you have high self-management skills, you're able to manage your own emotional state. You're able to take responsibility for your actions. You're open to change and adaptability, and you're trustworthy. So a quick example on looking at managing, self-managing. I will tell you on my journey, true story, my self-management area was very low. And it was the area that I had honestly been working on for a long period of time. Why? Because I'm very frank. I'm very just open. And if something strikes me and I have an emotion at that time, it was just like, okay, I just said it. And that was it. And it's like, oh, when I spoke about shutting down a room, I used to be able to shut down a room, and not bragging on it, but it's the honesty. I could shut down a room quickly with just not managing the words that came out of my mouth based upon the emotions that I felt. And then I went back and said, what did I do? Did something happen? I was just asking questions. It was like, Angela, you don't ask questions like that in a public setting. It made people feel emotionally a certain type of way. I said, okay. So I had to go back and apologize. So if we're being very transparent, this is a journey, as I spoke on everybody. And I have learned over time to manage my emotion. And so if I feel that something is going on, if I'm in an emotional state, I'll just go leave, close my door for a period of time, take my deep breaths, and then I come back out and I'm fine. Next. So strategies to develop. Control self-talk. How much negative headspace do we each have? When I spoke about emotions and calling them out, a lot of times, if we're true and honest to ourselves, we will find that we have more negative headspace than we have positive, because we're always focusing on how do we become better? How do we become better? And we focus on our areas of opportunities opposed to looking at our strengths. And when you put all that headspace in your areas of opportunities, then you don't see how amazing you are in the strengths that you have to build upon the strengths to continue to move forward so you can give more positivity to yourself. Calling out the emotions, as we did earlier, work on not blaming others. Realize your emotions are your emotions. If things occur because of the emotions and you say things or you do things or you make decisions based upon your emotions, don't blame others for your emotions. That's your personal emotion. You have to own that. But the only way to own that is if, one, you're self-aware, and then you practice on how you manage those emotions. And seek mentors to learn from. As I spoke earlier, benefits, becoming mentors, but having mentors who have the ability to talk through things with you, to challenge you in your emotions, but also to turn back and ask questions that will require you to answer them yourself, to recognize where you're at emotionally. Next. So emotional hijack. Yes, this is truly real. We usually make, I use the terminology, oh, that person just came in a room and dropped a bomb. And then when they dropped that bomb, oh my goodness, everything shut down. And that was the end of that. And no one else did anything else. It's over. Because an emotional hijack person will come in and swoop through a room so fast that they will quickly emotionally hijack everybody else in that room. And depending on how you react to emotions will determine, a lot of times people just shut down and say, I'm done, or you do the other one. So you either have a flight or you have a fight. You're either gonna fight with the person or you're gonna shut down and I'm done. It's over, I can't do it anymore. So when you become emotionally hijacked, these are some cues to recognize that it's coming on. You have an increased heart rate. You begin to have butterflies in your stomach. Tense, your muscles get real tense, a lot of times up around your shoulders and your neck. Your voice begins to raise, or you begin sweating. A lot of times we give the terminology is, I'm having an anxiety attack at this moment. Because these are also symptoms. When you recognize your anxiety building up, it's emotions. It's all building up to where you're about to literally be emotionally hijacked. And if you don't know this about yourself and what your triggers are, this can instantly jump on you before you know it. And then all of a sudden you're just in a tizzy and you're just going out on everybody because you've been emotionally hijacked. Next. So, after I done talked about being emotionally hijacked, tell me how you feel when you look at this picture. What emotions come across?
Relaxation.
Station.
Serene.
Anticipation, because I'm going to be there probably in about 45 days.
Oh,
Calm.
okay. Serene. The reason why I asked behind the emotions in this particular picture after being emotionally hijacked, if we know we're about to go into, literally, we've been aware, oh my gosh, it's coming on, I feel it, I'm about to be emotionally hijacked, I have to do something quick before I step in this room with people, whatever it may be that you're going to do, a presentation or anything. Do the opposite of what you're feeling. I know that's easier said than done, but when you have triggers and you recognize your triggers, it's to flip your thought process from the negative feeling that you're having, those negative emotions that you're feeling, and go into a space that makes you happy, makes you relax, makes you feel calm, makes you feel serene. For those of you that may be on Zoom meetings with me, I will have different backdrops on my Zoom calls. But there's one, and I think it's Tiffany that I saw earlier, has the backdrop that I use with the palm trees and the water behind, like sitting at the beach. If I ever have that palm tree backdrop, it means it's a very emotional day. And I am literally changing my thought process by looking at my backdrop while I sit in meetings. So it is, I have learned in the process, I will throw a backdrop on for the switch of the triggers that I may be experiencing at that time and flip my mind. So, ooh, people may say, oh, Angela, I love your backdrop. Yes, that's where I'm at today. It's one of those days and I'm going to sit on the beach. That's why. It's an emotional day. So you flip the thought processes, whatever way is best for you, to change your mindset to be able to continue on and not become emotionally hijacked. Next. So social awareness. So we talked about self. We talked about our individual self. First, we got to know ourselves, who we are, and then what we do in the responses of learning how to self-manage. Now we have to learn that when we go out into meetings, into the public, if you have family meetings, hanging out with family, what happens on the social side? So social awareness is the ability to sense, understand, and respond to what others are feeling. Requires level of self-awareness, awareness of your emotions, allow you to read the room and the emotions in the room. I will tell you, I had an experience yesterday. I was on a Zoom meeting, and in the meeting, this young lady kept trying her hardest to speak. And then people just kept talking over and talking over and talking over. And so she just went on mute and her face changed and she didn't open up her mouth anymore. And people just kept talking and just kept talking and kept talking. So I unmuted myself because I seen it happening. And I said, excuse me, this individual's been trying to speak, but I don't think anybody actually heard her. So if we can give her that space to make her comments, that would be great. And then later on that night, because it was a later meeting, she emailed me and she said, thank you so much. I just didn't know how to break in and say what I needed to say because everybody was talking. And so I just felt kind of bad because no one heard me. So what happened in that instance was, in reading and understanding that room, her voice was squashed very quickly because no one was listening or watching on the screen to see that someone else had something to say. Next. High social awareness is sensitive to others and self-oriented. So basically, I just gave you an example of being sensitive to others, being able to read body languages, being able to see those facial expressions when people are presenting, conversations are taking place. We wear our emotions on our sleeves. We may practice very hard to have that straight face. That takes a long time to practice, not being able to wear your emotions on your sleeves. But reality is, within emotional triggers, our body changes, our face changes, even though we may not say a word. Okay, next. And if you hear grass cutting, please forgive that. They're cutting. I'm at home and they're cutting grass. So strategies to develop. Watch your body languages. Active listening. Put yourself in someone else's shoes before you judge them. No, we shouldn't be judging, but reality is we do. We're human. Practice people watching and be socially present. Next. How does a presentation, if you give presentations, whether it's a training, standing up before a group of people to acknowledge where you work, to speak about where you work, what does presenting to others do to you? What's the emotion it gives you?
Adrenaline sometimes.
Mm. Good adrenaline? Is it in a positive way, or the adrenaline like, oh?
I think good adrenaline for me because I enjoy that challenge.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I was gonna say excitement for myself for sure.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful time to be able to brag if you're doing it for your workplace, to brag on your workplace.
Anxiousness.
Okay. Why does it make you feel anxious?
I usually don't want to mess up.
Okay. Okay. I want to talk to you more about that later, because I might have something to help you with that. Only reason why I used to be like that. I hated presentations. Ooh, public speaking. Oh my goodness, no. I get ready for emotional hijack. I was having it back then. I sweat and everything, but I learned something over time about that. And I was the same way. I don't want to get up there and mess up or anything like that. So Shireen, email me afterwards. Let's connect. I may be able to help you with it.
And Angela, I do have to say, she's a wonderful presenter. She does it all the time and she's really good. So she's good at it.
And you know what? Most of the time, that is the reality. Those who are natural at doing that are the ones who have the most anxiety about doing it. Any other thoughts before we move on? Okay. Next slide, please. Now, relationship management. The ability to manage, influence, and inspire emotions in others, and ability to find common ground. I will tell you, this is what takes place every day in any form of leadership. If you're in a leadership role and whatever decisions have to be made, you have to be able to influence, manage the emotions that's going to take place, but at the same time, find the common ground with those that you work with so that it all comes together and you can move forward in whatever decisions have to be made. Next. So high relationship management is able to handle emotions in relationships, whatever relationships that are. They are reality every day that we meet someone. We're in relationships, we're building relationships, we're starting relationships. It's what we do as humans. It's all about the relationships. You're able to influence and inspire others, and you foster teamwork and collaboration. Next. So strategies to develop. Work to build trust with others by keeping your word, being dependable and reliable, which is huge. Most of the time we hear, I keep my promise. If you say you keep your promise, keep your promise. Acknowledge others' feelings. Be honest and communicate your boundaries. So if there's something that makes you feel uncomfortable or something that you're not able to do, and when we go back to talk about promises, be honest and communicate, I don't know if I can actually do that. Or if you can say, I will make an attempt. I'm not going to promise you, but I will try. But communicate that with them. Or if it's a definite boundary for you, like, no, that's kind of against what I believe. And so I'm going to have to think on that and find a different way. If we can have more conversations about another way to achieve a goal, if it comes against what you value in life. And then set realistic expectations for yourself and others. Be honest with yourself, but also be honest with others and set those expectations of just put it out there how you are as a person and what you expect from yourself, but what you expect from others. Next, Relationship management activity. How many people are in group settings all the time, every day, and have to work with each other? If so, how do you manage those relationships?
Good communication.
You said good communication?
Yes.
What does good communication look like?
For me, it's just having communication with each other.
Okay.
Being a good
Whether that's good or
listener,
bad.
being able to listen to others well.
That's hard. That's hard, isn't it? Because I find we all, if you really look at it, communication is probably like the number 1 issue that most people have, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's at home. And the first thing they say is, well, they didn't listen to me.
Yep.
I think it's being clear and understanding people's expectations and barriers for whatever the group objective is.
Okay. We have having transparency in the chat and holding a space for people to be open and vent. Absolutely. But at the same time with that, we have to make sure that I completely agree to open space and allow somebody to vent, but we have to make sure that the person that they're venting to has a higher emotional intelligence to be able to manage what is going to come out that person's mouth in their vent session.
I think that having boundaries and acknowledging everyone's space is very important.
Absolutely. We have the golden rule. Treat others as you want them to treat you.
I think it's also really important to be aware that everybody may not be on the same page that you're on, and that differences are empowering. They don't have to separate us. Sometimes they can bring us together for a greater good.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I'm going to divert real quick, but then I'll come back. So with that statement that you just made, Lori, Strength Finders is a great assessment for those. If you have not taken it, it will identify your top 5 strengths immediately. And when you understand who you work with and the strengths that lie within them, that becomes with the differences of individuals. And then you begin to build upon that as the story, opposed to looking at it as areas of opportunities. We embrace all the differences, and then we begin to formulate and understand the team with the differences that we have, that if something comes down the line, if we have challenges, or we just have certain situations that may not be where our expertise lies, then we know where to go, whose strength that is to help us. So yes, I diverted a little bit to throw in something else, but it tied in with what Lori made the statement. If we can learn to embrace each other's differences and, acknowledging emotions and understanding the relationships of the person as a whole, the team that we are working with, we can be so much more productive in life, as well as our family. When you have to have family conversations, we can be so much more productive in life when we understand all different aspects between the emotions and how we manage the relationships behind those emotions.
Yeah, like I would like to add that for me, like being in many leadership roles, I realized that we have to choose to be thermostats or thermometers. At the end of the day, just because everybody on my team is having a bad day does not mean I'm going to have a bad day too, So as much as I want to acknowledge how people are feeling in the room, like I get to choose to be a thermostat and shift that environment as well, whether it's in a group setting or in an office setting.
Very good. But what you've done is you've acknowledged, one, you understood what was going on in that room. You've acknowledged it as it relates to how you feel and the choices that you choose to manage yourself. Very good. Next. So As I mentioned, emotional intelligence, there's a test, and I will give some links at the end. There's a book that you can use and gives you more in-depth information to take this test, this assessment yourself. But it's a practice to build upon and to grow and personally develop your emotional intelligence. So ways that you can actually practice developing it is think of an experience that was really, really stressful for you, whether it's at work, home, in a public setting. Visualize removing yourself from the situation. And then answer the following questions. What did you do well? What worked? What did not work? What were you feeling? Were you aware of your feelings at that time? Did your feelings influence the way you thought about yourself, others involved, and the situation? So when you're in a situation and you're aware, you catch yourself, it's almost like step out your shoes, look at yourself from a different point of view, and answer all these questions to determine how you are doing as it relates to building your emotional intelligence. Next. As I mentioned, here's some resources. The Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a book. In the book, they will have in the back is a designated code. Once you take this assessment, the code is linked to you. And it will give you not only the score, but it gives you areas of different things that you can do to practice developing your emotional intelligence. Also, there's some online assessments that you can take, which has been placed here as well. And I will actually tell you one of this online assessments came from a next leaders, a person in the next leaders cohort who could not be with us today, but had already gone through this process and shared this link with us. So I give credit where credit is. Someone else forwarded that link to it, and it's been very helpful. The first two, yes, two of the assessments, the links are free. And then the book is a book. It's not, the book doesn't cost that much, but it gives you probably some more in-depth information if you choose to pick the book, purchase the book. Okay. And then lastly, next slide. So I want to leave you with a final thought. Emotionally intelligent people hold themselves accountable for their behavior, their failures, their decisions, and their successes. That's a thought. So emotional intelligence is a personal thing.